Hey traders, Raghee here, and in this update we're going to talk a little bit about just the overall health of the market. Where do we sit right now, and what is it that I'm looking at as we are rounding out the month of July in the heart of summer, and also as we are going into the options expiration tomorrow. So let's not overcomplicate this, right? I think at the end of the day, probably the one thing that scares more trend traders than anything is the one last trend trade. In other words, that idea that one of the pullbacks that we finally take is going to be the one that just keeps on going. And that's true. At some point, a trending market like we have here in the NASDAQ is going to morph into not a downtrend, but it's going to morph into a chop. It's going to morph into more of a distribution market. And that's just part of trading. And it doesn't mean that we get bearish. It simply means that we're no longer trend following. We're still buyers, but we'll be buyers at oversold support levels. So ultimately, we need to know where the trend following trades are and where the oversold buy levels are. And so this is a trend following pullback versus an oversold buy, but to me, that's all potential buy area. That doesn't mean that I want to sit, let me make this clear, it doesn't mean that I want to sit through all of this. That's unrealistic. But it does mean there are different levels and different setups in this area. One such setup is happening now. And again, remember, this is happening on the tail end of 2 days of Powell testimony and going into expiration. But let's just imagine we're hermits in a cave for a moment, right? Because that's really, when we're looking at our technical analysis, we should just sort of ignore the news and the calendar and the macro and everything else and just look at the price action from the standpoint of the four factors, right? I want to look at the standpoint from, of course, price. We look at from volatility, volume, and time. Now, time is options expiration. Volatility, well, how large was this pullback? Was this a dramatic sell-off or within normal parameters? Volume, are we sitting near some sort of volume level, a volume ledge? And of course, what does the current price mean? And that will then also go into the moving averages. We basically today in the NASDAQ futures tested the 13, right? That's a 13 exponential right there. Now, I'll tell you what, I would have been far happier if this week we were weak enough to get to the 21. 21 EMA here, and then take a look just to the right. You'll see the volume ledges. Look at this gorgeous volume ledge right in here, right? That's fantastic. I would have loved that culmination of a 21 EMA, but that's not what we have. We have a slighter volume ledge here near the 13. That would be an aggressive buy. And by the way, this buy off the 13, not the first time that the NASDAQ has bounced off this level. All right, so very aggressive long position on the NAS if we're interested in such a thing. Well, let's take that same thing over, extend it to the same kind of analysis and extend it over to the S&P. I have one propulsion dot. I need really a minimum of 3 and preferably 5 propulsion dots before I say, yeah, the 13 is something that I want to focus on. Not a whole heck of a lot of volume. It is interesting, though. I'm going to talk about the VWAP here in a moment. We have 2 anchored. I do not use the rolling variety. We have 2 anchored volume weighted average price, VWAPs, okay? VWAPs. And we actually ended up closing right at the support of it, okay? Now let me take you back to the NASDAQ for a moment. Just below it, okay? So not as ideal there. What about the Dow? Well, unlike the NASDAQ and the S&P that have double green market structure, the Dow does not have double green market structure. The lower row of the JT multi is yellow, as you can see here. So while I don't mind being a buyer, I'll have to look for a whole lot more confirmation before I do. So let's take a look. Did we have some interesting confirmation for support in the Dow? Look at this volume ledge right in here. Look at all that volume right in there. Okay, not surprisingly, we stopped in that volume ledge. Here's the VWAP, And here's 34,600. Some really interesting levels that say, hey, from a price perspective, major psychological level, looks interesting. From a volume perspective, not only the volume ledge, but also the VWAP also looks very interesting. So I would have loved if this Dow had organized in terms of the moving averages into a double green, which just eludes us here still. So I'll be a little bit more fussy about the Dow, the YM futures. And that right now is sort of the health of the market. That's where we are right now. That's what we're dealing with here in the heart of summer. I'll see you in the next update. Hey traders, Raghee from Simpler Trading. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to leave a like and a comment below. And remember, subscribe and click the bell icon so you'll get notified of the next update. And when you're ready to join me for live trading, be sure to head on over to simplertrading.com. I'll see you in the next update.